Welcome. This video will give you an introduction to Quarter 1 of the Extreme Supply Chain Management Simulation, as well as things to think about as you start the simulation. In the beginning of the simulation, you will not be able to price above your costs. There are many startup costs which will exceed your revenues. Your production volumes will be very low, resulting in high per unit costs. There will be no early profits. Revenues will fall below costs at the outset of the business. Profits will come later. Your goal is to speed up the adoption rate to get out of the red. You are currently in the introduction stage. You want to be in the growth stage where there is high demand and low costs. Keep in mind that this is a volume business. Everyone's costs go down and profit margins go up with larger volumes. Resellers need to be expanding to drive up business. Resellers need capacity to meet the demand they will generate. Current capacities will probably be insufficient in Quarter 2 if resellers expand as much as they should. Suppliers need to anticipate the needs of the resellers. Make commitments in Quarter 1 to take care of the potential business in Quarter 2. Always think ahead. Projecting cash flows for resellers and suppliers is vital, given that this will be what ultimately determines your performance. In order to do your best, the Finance VP should enter all decisions. That is, the financial component of each decision will be posted to the pro forma cash flow. They should also run factory or warehouse simulation to estimate the production costs and revenues. They will also load data into the pro forma cash flows as well as check ending cash position. It should be about $500,000 or more. They should also check the income statement. It will most likely be negative in Quarter 1. Resellers. There are a few considerations you should consider, particularly from the marketing VP standpoint. First, in setting price, you have to consider costs, which include production, marketing, and overhead costs. Profit goals, what the market will bear, as well as your competition. The question of what will the market bear can be a function of elasticity. Keep in mind that with inelasticity, price is not a big factor, but the more elasticity equates to demand dropping faster with increasing prices. Also keep in mind that low competitor prices will often kill the demand for your product, so don't price too high. Another question to consider is how often you should advertise. Keep in mind that too little advertising can lead to a lack of knowledge on your product, whereas too much often has diminishing returns in terms of the value for your organization. But it also can depend on what your competitors do. Marketing should also consider how many salespeople is best to optimize performance. Too many can have diminishing returns or even lower demand, whereas too few reduces sales. The following are recommendations for the test market until more is known. Choose 2 target segments. Choose 1 or 2 brands for each segment. Price at what customers are willing to pay. Keep advertising under $300,000. Hire 5 to 7 salespeople, maximum being 7. Another factor that is important is the ability to project demand. The following are some tips. Salespeople will probably sell between 50 to 150 units each. Demand is a function of market potential of the segment and market and the quality of your marketing decisions. On average, salespeople will sell 100 units each for the entire first quarter of the test market. In forecasting demand, suppose you hire 5 salespeople. Each is able to sell 100 units. You need at least 500 units in inventory. Add 10% to 20% of safety stock. Now, let's get into supplier considerations, specifically for the manufacturing VP. The following are considerations for the factory configuration. Factory runs 1 shift, 8 hours per day, 5 days per week, 13 weeks per quarter, or 65 days per quarter. Only 1 brand can be produced at a time. Until that brand is produced, shipped, and delivered to the reseller will lose sales. Without a production control system, one can only produce one brand per day. The new facility, there are problems with changeover and reliability that need to be fixed on a frequent basis. There is a difference between fixed capacity and operating capacity. Specifically, fixed capacity is the maximum number of units that can be produced in any quarter. 50 is usually good to start. The operating capacity is the number of units that are scheduled to be produced. Operating capacity must always be less than or equal to the fixed capacity. Now, for scheduling operating capacity, you'll want to forecast total demand for a quarter and add 30% more for long changeover times. For example, suppose you have one customer with a demand of 300 units of brand A and 200 units of brand B. You add 150 units for changeovers. This setting operating capacity to 650 units per quarter in order to serve a potential demand of 500. Now, you'll want to keep in mind lean operations. There's a problem. Only one brand can be produced at a time. To produce a second brand, a factory must be stopped, and many parts and fixtures must be swapped out, taking many hours or even days. Brands with diverse components force long changeovers and thus lower production, utilization, as well as increased production costs. To improve efficiency, invest in research and development. This will improve changeover equipment, materials, as well as procedures. Also invest in production control systems. The ultimate goal is mass customization. The factory itself is set up to run on a pull inventory control system. There are two important decisions to make, the target point and the replenishment point. The target is the maximum number of units in the warehouse and does not have much of an effect until you go to a high level of management information systems. Replenishment point is the minimum number of units in a warehouse. This is when the inventory of a brand drops to the RP. It is the signal to the plant manager to do a changeover and start a production as soon as possible. The replenishment point is the key in the early quarters. Lower numbers cause shorter production runs, more changeovers, higher production costs, lower inventories, and more stockouts. Higher numbers have the opposite effect, but can lead to higher stockouts if the RP is set too high because of the long time between changeovers. Safe values until experience is gained is usually a target of 100 and a replenishment between 20 to 50. There are, however, constraints that you must keep in mind. These are that a brand can only be produced by one supplier. A reseller cannot have two suppliers produce the same brand in the same quarter. The reliability of the brand is also linked to the source of the supply. A brand cannot be eliminated from a contract by setting the inventory to zero. If the parties to a contract want to exclude one or more of the brands in the original RFP, then the contract must be rejected and a new RFP must be written. If the inventory is set to zero, the brand will not be produced, but the reseller will be prohibited from having another supplier produce the brand.